All right, we're here at the Code Review Weekly Workshop, and we're gonna pair up on some code reviews. Looks like Yannick has one on the brain. Do you want to start it off, Yannick?
100%. Let me grab the screen and I will give you an introduction that you hopefully find interesting. So, does anybody in here have any experience yet with the GitLab VSCode extension?
Never heard of
Asking,
it. I'm
amazing, amazing.
I'm
Then
joking. I'm joking because I do have experience on it. And what's funny too is I saw this MR and I did not have time for it, and I was like, I'm gonna give this to Tomas. Um, and then it's funny
okay,
that it's like implicitly circling back and
yeah,
Tomas.
absolutely. We should maybe give it like a boomerang label or something. But yeah, good stuff. So I'm pretty new in the VS Code or in the extension reviewer game. It's embarrassing how little I know at this point, really. But yeah, I'm here to change that.
Oh, that's
So
must be good then.
yeah, this MR was assigned to me a couple of minutes, hours along those lines ago. So I kind of have an idea what it is about, but I have to admit I've never seen those features before yet. That this thing is looking into. Hey, Paulina, we're
Yeah.
just getting started on the pairing. So yeah, the feature is brand new to me. I know not enough TypeScript that I'm really comfortable with. So let's see
Yeah.
what we can do with it. So
Do you wanna check out the changes locally? Do you think that would be an easier way to to get a sense of everything?
absolutely, that was actually so the time I spent on this is limited, but that was actually the first thing that I did not solve yet is how do you actually compile and get your VS Code like running with a local extension? Because like the only thing
It's
I
really
did,
easy.
awesome, that is fantastic. So maybe we let me quickly check my terminal. Maybe I even have to clone the repository. Um,
Right. I'm happy to drive too. If you don't have the
cool.
repository cloner set up, I
Yeah,
can.
to keep things efficient, that would
Yep.
be
So
fantastic.
you already linked to it. Let me see if I can get to it. I've been toying around with a high contrast theme though lately. So if something is assaulting to your eyes, let me know and I can switch to a more aes-
I can get some shades
aesthetically
that'd be
aesthetically
good.
neutral theme. Okay. Sometimes when I'm working, and I'm really in the zone, I like to pretend that I'm like in the matrix. And it's hard to do that unless things are high contrast. So I'm only half joking. All right, let me get it going. Let me check out. All right, we are here. Let me share my screen. So lately, never mind. Yeah, I won't go into it. I was gonna share my new like productivity hacking setup because these days I find my attention is just so fragile. And it's hard for me to, I don't know. There's a level of motivation involved, but I'm having to be really careful about how I can get in the zone and get my attention. So having a different theme helps. I will also lately it's like been turning out all the lights and I turn on like some retro anime with the sound off that I have no idea what's going on, but it's like I'm just kind of looking at it, it's like that's so weird. And I go back and I'm coding. Uh so did you all ever watch Mobile Suit Gundam?
None.
Um I remember this being on TV and I would just catch glimpses of it and it never made any sense. Now I'm watching with the sound off and it makes even less sense. It's like so there's huge mechs, but it's also like I don't know, some level of like politics. And it's like, huge mechs are fighting in space, and then you have everyone around a table like talking seriously and weird, like I don't know, royalties. It's weird. I have no idea what's going on. Anyways, all right, let's is this theme okay for everybody? Okay,
It's
let's do it.
okay.
So we're gonna curl the changes here and apply them so we can check it out. But you know what? I'm not on main. All right, let me go to main. Okay, now let me curl the changes. Okie dokie. So let me get a sense of what are the big files. Okay, it looks like there's not actually a lot of big files being changed here. So we have a change happening. I'm gonna move everyone's faces down here. We have a change happening here to change type decoration provider. And this is an implementation of VS Code file decoration provider. So with a lot of the things, because I have some context here, a lot of the features for the VS Code extension are going to be implemented as us giving implementations to an interface VS Code gives us. We look for references to here. If I look for references, we see in our main method of, which is this activate method of the desktop application, we register this file decoration provider. You would be uh a very wise observer to then start asking questions. Well, what is a file decoration provider? And that's where I would direct you to the VS Code extension API. But basically, if anytime a file is viewed, VS Code will check, hey, do we have any decorations I need to apply to this file? And those decorations look like these M's. In the GitLab Workflow extension, it also looks like it also looks like these like comments. You see there's like a little comment bubble, so it's telling me that like Tomas left a comment on these things. So these are all implemented by, I believe, I well, not, these are all file decoration providers. I think this one is just the change type. That's my understanding of okay, so that's some content.
So what is the change type representing? It's like delete, modified, these kind of stuff?
Yes. And
Okay.
so looking at like the screenshots is the show decoration, which is going to be the text color and the tab label based on the change type. So that's, I think, the main change that's going to happen here, because for some reason our items in that on this list already have these letters. But once I like, maybe open up this MR change, I lose that green file decoration. So I think for some reason, VS Code is sending us a URL that we're not recognizing at the moment. And that's why we're trying to make a change here. So here, if we get the URI comes from this review URI scheme, that's when we're gonna try to provide our own decoration. So that's seems additive and seems cool. Looks like we have I'm gonna not look at the test files at the moment. I'm gonna go then to review URI. Oh, this is interesting. Um, review params. So whenever we create our review URI, we are adding a change type now to it. And whenever we are looking from the review URI, we're going to pull from the query. Oh, is the query? Why is the query JSON? We would not expect our URI query to be JSON, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I'd expect it to be the whole, like the query equal and the URI query.
Is it just the hash, an object form of it, of the keys and values?
I don't know. Let's take a look at what that looks like. so we can, I'm going to create a little breakpoint here. And then I'm going to run npm install. This was your main question, Yannick. How do I run this thing?
How do I connect? Yeah, basically.
So VS Code has this kind of capability built in pretty well. But on top of that, Tomas is really good at the DX of a project. And so he's provided there's a launch task for run extension, and it will run the extension and open up a separate window of VS Code with these changes. This is the only extension that'll be loaded. I have to hit debug anyway, but see, now we got a new thing of VS Code open. Boom, it hit my breakpoint, so it brought me back to here. It's really, really easy.
Black magic. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah, that's just striking me as odd. Yeah, the URI query is a JSON object. I would expect it to be a query string, like an actual URL query string. But I guess it's cool. I guess it's fine. Uh, yeah. Uh, so yeah, here's the so it's trying to pull an old review URL that I had opened up. And so you see the query is, yeah, we're not even doing the key value key name equal thing. We're doing this whole JSON thing, which is
Mhm.
but I think that's kind of a question I want to leave because that I do is striking me as just a little odd. Um non-blocking. I was surprised to find that the query string is JSON and not bona fide URL query string. Any reason for this, or is JSON just convenient? Does that sound like a good comment?
Mhm.
Oh wait, you're reviewing this.
Yeah, I was about to say, but I'm like, I feel hardly qualified to give this
Love
thing a review.
Yannick.
So.
It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't look like it's from me.
Yeah, nobody will ever notice.
With Yannick and Co. and the Code Review Weekly Workshop. Okay. This is a great MR for you to review. Like, if to be familiar with this project, this is a great MR for because there's not a huge rush here.
Mhm.
Tomas has already provided I think a large part of the implementation. So this is
This is like the finishing touches, kind of, right?
I think so. And
Okay.
so that asking questions is a great place to just start. And I think Tomas would gracefully answer whatever
Cool.
questions. Okay, let me go back to man, how dangerous that would be of like let me give her my breakpoint. But like what if there's a GitLab feature, if you're a maintainer, you can just add a comment as any other user. Like it'd be so weird. If I could just I want to be able to submit a review as Yannick. Uh
Yeah, or proving even better.
okay. So all right, let's go back then to here. Return params change type and
Mhm.
all right. This is supposed
Before we jump further into code, can I ask a question about reproducing this stuff?
yes.
So with the other VS Code window you showed, is that like already connected and logged into your account? Like the modifying type or changes type, whatever it's called, and the color scheme this MR is adding. Are we able to see that in action
Yeah,
on
do you
the
want to
other?
test it out? Let's actually test it.
I'd be curious.
So I'm running the extension. Oh, I thought I got rid of my breakpoint. Maybe I accidentally added it. Let's go back. Okay, so if I go to, so I'm in this test project right now that Tomas has set up that has a whole bunch of different merge requests. So I'm going to
Gotcha.
go
Okay.
to test deleting file. And
Okay.
so if I click
Cool.
on this is what I'd expect to change. Is I'm going to be able to see this
Mhm.
redness here.
And we're just speaking about the file name, right? Not the file content. That is a different story.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So that, I mean, that's all in VS Code internal stuff. Is VS Code is going to figure out like VS Code is calling upon all implementations of this interface. Like, hey, do you have any decorations for me? And that's how a lot of the VS Code API behaves. Is you don't have free reign of what you want to do. So VS Code has to kind of query for implementations to interfaces, and it's
Gotcha.
it's a very extensible UI though, or very extensive. They've done it in a pretty good way. Okay, so that's looking good. I was concerned about the return type of this, because if params change type doesn't exist for some reason, especially like what I just saw was I had opened up a previous review file thing, and but it looks like we're checking for that, and that should be fine. I think going back to
Help me out. Where are we checking? I don't see any checks.
well, I think we're doing the inline like short circuiting. So if this is falsy, I guess we just return the falsy value. And
There we go. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Going back to where was it? That's so interesting. Yeah, this thing I also think is just strikes me as clever. I don't totally know like how I feel about it. This is a cool TypeScript thing. Paulina, have you done much TypeScript?
Oh, yes, with Angular. That was my last job before
Okay.
GitLab. So I had a break, but yeah, I did a
let's
bit,
hope
yeah.
you weren't trying to escape it, because it's coming. This is a neat trick of, so without adding these as consts, the type of these constants would be a string. But by adding as const after the string literal, the type is actually the string added. So what happens there is then I can say a change type has got to be only one of those strings, not just any string. And TypeScript is really good at like verifying this kind of these like strict union type string stuff. So like if I tried to create a review param where change type was foo or unknown, I'd have to resolve that in the code. It's really cool. Yeah. But I did think it was interesting that he needed the type of, but it makes sense because I'm creating a type. I can't just reference values when I'm making types. So I think that's probably why. But yeah. Okay. All right. So then we have, this is a test util. Oh yeah, and then that's just it. Oh wait, yeah, so then this is just a test util. That's straightforward. Oh wait, whoa, we're actually moving this thing. Okay. Why are we moving that thing? Change type. Oh, we're just import it from review URI. Okay, sure. Why not? Common params. I'm not sure where we are here. Let me see, what are the references to this thing? Oh, yes. So this is, I think, the actual list of this is the actual list that shows up here in the tree. I believe. URI for discussion. Ah, yes. And this was, so here's more context that I had that I don't know if it's clear in the MR description, but let's see. Yes. This is so this is helpful context. So there was a previous attempt at resolving this. If we say it was added and then subsequently removed, if I look at the changes of this time, we tried to do this but removed it. I'll run into the issue was caused by, yes, we did a partial change review file URIs when we showed the diff to tell VS Code what files were diffing. Maps comments to files based on URIs. So that was the situation, was before we weren't showing or displaying any of the review comments because we just do a strict like, oh, the comp does we don't factor in the query parameters into the URI. So it's like I had to have to know the query parameters at the time when I'm doing this. That just wasn't matching the, so I'd open up my, yeah. So it's like, we get some discussions from the GitLab API. And then based on all those contents, we'll then try to parse that to a review URI, which is what we were just looking at. But previously this thing did not have change type, and the other thing did have change type, which meant the review URIs never matched. So we would pull all these discussions down, but we weren't matching them to the review URIs we were building for the file tree. And that really just, to me, is shining a light on there's some hidden coupling that isn't great. So hopefully, but it looks like Tomas is now handling that there, although it might be nice to figure out how we could compare these equalities. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, this is the bit that I was like, oh, this isn't probably great. Yes. Yeah, so something like we do this. So all comments that we get from the GitLab API, we're gonna see for this file, is it included there? And it's like, okay, we need to actually filter out between metadata in the query and identifying data in the query. So it's like, I feel like the file URI should be able to include metadata that we don't have to use for the equality check of comments. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay, because I'm just gonna keep saying it over and over again. My poor children, I'm like doing math with them, and something's not totally making sense, and I just keep going. I keep saying over the same thing, but in all these different ways. She's like, "You don't get it. I don't want to hear it, Dad." And it's like, well, let me try it a different way. She's like, "No, you need to just stop." But anyways, um, okay. Yeah, so this is interesting, but so the main thing here is, I guess we are now here in MR item model. This is the big change. I'd be really curious what's going on here. And like, where were we doing change before? Because I didn't see that, like, yeah. Um, I don't really know. I would ask that question. So I really don't know. I can't figure it out right now. We don't have a whole lot of time. Maybe we'll just ask a regular question. can you give some context to why this needed to be changed? Was change used previously? Should this always have been named change type? That's kind of what I'm.
Yeah, it really seems pretty unrelated.
Yeah, I also just have no context of that file. I'd have to dig into it. So, okay, and then here's the other one. So here, when we are, so my references to this function are, yeah, we load the MR and we are getting all of the MR discussions, and then we build these URIs from the discussions. And so when I'm building a URI for discussion, we are, okay, so we pull getting the path here. We are then looking for the file by looking at, oh, this takes an MR version, looking at diffs. Okay. And then if the file exists, common thread cannot be associated with any MR files. And then we just log it, add this comment to.
Why do we hardcode change type to modified though?
I think this is a TypeScript thing. Good question. So here's something. These, sorry. We get some like information of like, are we a renamed file, deleted file, or a new file? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good question.
Like this, I'm not too sure about the TypeScript explanation. Like if I look at the condition that is starting in line 50, it says like if file, and then we're assigning change type to whatever is coming out of get change type, and we're passing in file. Never minding the, oh, it's within the else. Oh, I missed that. Okay.
That might be my theme. You can blame my theme.
Absolutely. Okay, well, things then. Yeah, that's okay. Gotcha. Never mind.
Yeah, but I guess you're right. I was looking at this. I was like, oh wait, why can't we get it from the file? And it's because we're in the else. So I guess this is just handling the situation, and TypeScript kind of forces us to do that because it's like, well, we got this random array, so we can't be totally guaranteed that everything is gonna exist. Ideally, we shouldn't ever hit there, but I think it's possible. It's possible. And I think we're just adding an arbitrary change type because the reality is we're not actually going to be able to show any of these in the UI anyway. So because change type has to exist, like it's not going to let me just put undefined here, like because the review URI is really expecting a truthy change type, and it's got to be one of those types. This is just arbitrary. I think. My other question, based on your knowledge of diffs, do you think it's sufficient for me to pull the file by looking at new path or old path? Does that make sense?
Not really yet.
So I think like some of the ways the diffs are organized is like if I just did a modification, I think new path and old path are the same.
There's also
I
a
do,
deletion, it's like from null to null. I don't know if that.
I don't know. Yeah. Let me see if we do this logic anywhere else. And if we do it anywhere else, it's probably okay. Maybe that's a bad way to think. New path. Old path. Oh yeah, over here we do kind of the same thing. Oh, find diff with path. Maybe we should use that helper.
Ah. I was about to argue we're doing this since 3 years, so it's probably bulletproof if we don't have an issue.
3 years. That's the perfect age for code
That's
correction.
well, why don't you write a test for it? It's old enough.
You could totally have like code connoisseurs of like, this code was from the region
Oh
of,
yeah.
was from the region of, northern Berlin.
A well-aged user.
Aging,
Okay, hints of oak.
exactly. And so oak. Exactly. Yeah. It has yeah. It's been aging perfectly under perfect conditions. It's been just maintained by an old grandma that would only drive the code church every Sunday. All right. It looks like we have a helper for this. And, oh. Helper for this. Do we want to expose and use that here so we can encapsulate this logic? Okay. Oh, produces logs, like, nice. Oh man, Tomas is so on top of things. You don't have to run it, trust me. Just to clarify, this is an arbitrary value. Is an arbitrary. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good pass through of the production code. We can walk through the test code. I actually have to hop off early. I gotta drop my dog off. But you all should keep the party going. It sounded like Chad had a MR to review. Did you wanna do that publicly, or do you like to review MRs privately, Chad?
I don't know, it's up to, I'll leave it up to the other two.
This is a backend MR, right?
Yeah, it's our more dev one.
I think that'd be interesting. Well, I do have to hop off. Thanks for bringing up that that code review. I think that was interesting. Thanks for hopping on, Yannick, Paulina, and Chad. I'll catch you all later.
Awesome, everyone.
So
So it's up to y'all. You could continue on this one, or
I'm happy to look into the backend thing. Whatever you feel like.
what do you want to do, Paulina? Decide to vote.
Anything really. I don't get many reviews recently, so I need new stuff to look at because I'm gonna go rusty. I know
Yeah, I
what
don't
happened when
either.
they
Let me get it open real quick. It's sorry, 1 second, and I'll open it. Here it is. Okay. Share my screen. Yeah, I don't either, and I had like flagged this one to do, and then I like totally got distracted by other things and forgot it. And you can see he just reminded me. So I'm a horrible reviewer because I don't get that many either, and then I saw this come through in my email and forgot about it. So let's see. Are you both of you are front end? Okay. See if I
Mm.
can let- can you see my screen? I need to make things bigger.
Yeah, can you zoom in a bit?
Yeah,
Um,
sure. I have a big monitor. What was that, Yannick? Is that good?
yeah, much better.
So, this implements the new table mentioned. Okay, here's the issue. We'll read the issue to start with. I'm not nearly as good at reviews as Paul. I don't know if anybody is, but I always try to start by reading everything through. So add the data store as described in the technical design for the new group agent mapping feature. So the context of this is for the remote development workspaces feature, which is where you can start a virtual workspace locally on a Kubernetes cluster. We're redoing the way we do our security policies. Like the first initial implementation of it was kind of naive, and this is a more complex one that works more like CI runners, where you can say this GitLab agent for Kubernetes is mapped to this group, and these are the people that can use it. So that's the way you can control, like, the agent is like this process that runs remotely on your Kubernetes cluster. I should put my stuff more over here so I'm looking at you when I talk. There we go. The agent is your workspace is run on a Kubernetes cluster, and the agent is part of a separate feature called GitLab Agent for Kubernetes, and we run on top of that. And that sort of lets GitLab communicate with and manage a Kubernetes cluster out here. And so you may have different agents like on different clusters. Maybe they have different resources, or one has more memory and CPU, or one is like on, an AWS instance with like a ton of memory or storage for data analysis or whatever. So like you can pick different agents to run your workspace on. Like I could even show it to you here if it is still ready for me. Yeah, so like here's the workspaces tab. You can see it running locally for me. And then I'm just giving you some context on the features so you have an idea of where we're going. So like you pick your project. So say, for example, GitLab Shell. That's one of the projects that's the test projects in the GDK. And then you pick the cluster that you run on. So like this is actually just running locally on my machine. This one called remote dev under my local rancher cluster. I think that side. And then the other one is I just bought a server right on the shelf behind me.
Okay.
Set it up on that one. That's the other one that I have to try to learn more about this and test it. So basically, that's what this controls. Like, who can see this? And for enterprises, it may be like, develop, engineering and this engineering group and this other engineering group. And like, they have different people who pay for the infrastructure or whatever, and they need to bill it, so they assign agents. So just trying to give you some context on what this is all about. So the whole technical design is here in the EMR. And there's a big doc. Oh, this is merged, but we can say, we could just look at it in the EMR. Right, so big design, like here's all the new APIs. And what he's saying here is that add the data store. And database changes. So here it is. And we need a new table, remote development, namespace, cluster agent mappings, and then Rails. Like do y'all have some familiarity with relational databases and SQL?
It's been a while, but yeah, I've seen it before.
Right, so like you have tables and like the way Rails works and the tables, like you know, everything has an ID. So like whenever you see an object that gets from the back end, it has an ID. That's called a primary key, and it's like it's a surrogate key. So it's like it doesn't have anything to do with the other columns in it. It's just the ID that uniquely identifies it. So when you want to associate like the workspaces table with the cluster agents table, and you want to say, okay, these things are joined in various ways. Like there may be any of these mapped to any of the other ones. Instead of just like one to many, it's many to many. So if it's one to many, you can just have like a foreign key field. You can just have like agent ID in the workspaces table, which we do, but this is like a separate thing. It's like which agents are available to which groups. And there could be any agent available to any group. And so for that, you have to have a join table, which is like every table has its own unique ID, but then it's like, okay, the names, a group is actually a namespace. There's multiple namespace. There's user namespaces and project namespaces, and groups are a namespace as well. So this is saying it's a join table that's saying, okay, what association have I created between a namespace and a cluster agent? And so when you do the query, you say select, like for this dropdown that we were seeing here, right? The behind the scenes is going to be select, you know, the agents where the group that I'm in, right? Whatever group of this project, its namespace, has an entry in this table, like select all the cluster agents for that group, and then go grab their agent data, which is like the name of it and all of the other information about it and its project and path. So that's what this new table does. And these are just sort of like additional metadata about who made it. It's like, okay, who created this association? When did they create it? Has it ever been updated? Which will probably never happen because usually you just create or delete these, but they sort of come together. I know I'm just rambling, but just trying to give y'all a little bit of back-end context since you're front-end.
Absolutely, yes. Thanks for the insights.
So what this MR is doing, and we always like associate our issues to MRs with this line at the top. It makes it a lot easier. We sort of have a one-to-one association. So this implements a new table. For more details, refer to the technical design. Just gave you that. And no screenshots. All right, so let's see if he's made any comments. No, other than so you see all this stuff that gets spammed out. This is like this MR knows, the bots know that this is a migration. So it's like run the query that exceeded the timing. And this is a create table, so I don't think it's a bad deal. Like the database reviewers sometimes will, like that's probably one of the feedbacks I'll give, that it should maybe put an explain plan. Let's see if it actually suggests it. Runtime histogram. And here's the migration, and it's telling you like the change in the database. And there's all of the commands that it ran as part of the migration. Okay. And then here's another migration. So this is like just giving you some context on everything it did. So, all right, let's look at the changes finally. So the docs we've updated. The Do you understand the concept of migrations in Rails?
I just asked ChatGPT, so I do have a very rough idea of why we're
Okay,
doing this.
yeah. So it's sort of agile.
Quick question. You just mentioned like migration in Rails. I would have expected to be more of a database, like a SQL thing, or is it like a Rails specific part to it?
Say that again?
Database migration to me sounds pretty much like as a database problem. So I expected you to speak about SQL, not so much about Rails. So that's where I'm coming from. Is there like a Rails specific part to it?
Yeah, so just a little history lesson, like before Rails came along, like people didn't have this concept of a methodical way to do database changes. They were like, you had to describe what you wanted, and then you like send a prayer over to the DBA, and like he would maybe grant it for you or not and make the change, and then you had to wait.
Okay.
So migrations is a way for the developers, they like took control of it, and it's like, I'm going to programmatically change my database schema and have a way to roll it forward and roll it back. It originally came out in this book that described it. It's the first time I saw it, and then it came out in Rails,
Gotcha. Okay.
and Rails sort of popularized it like many other things, like all of these web patterns that people have been doing for the last couple of decades. That was the revolutionary thing about Rails when it came out in 2005 or so. It's like all these standard things that everybody does, this is the way to do it. And it's all in one package. So that's why Rails became so popular. So, basically a convenient way to alter your database schema over time.
But
so you don't have to write SQL by hand, and you can go forwards and backwards. So
Gotcha.
that's what it looks like.
But that is still used today, like in every language framework, whatever you want to use, or is that
Exactly. So like
Gotcha.
it originally was first saw described in the Agile database book, and Rails sort of like standardized it, and then other frameworks have copied Rails since then. That's sort of the history of it.
Gotcha.
And
Okay,
then
cool.
there's a migration style guide. So here in our docs, we have a whole page on how all of the rules about how you should review these things, which I don't have them all memorized. Like I do them infrequently enough that I have to review all this. So we're definitely not going to finish this review today. And I'm not a database maintainer anyway, so I'm just sort of going to give it like a quick overview. And honestly, because I've looked at this technical review a lot and already reviewed this in detail, I'm like, yes, this is the table we need. So there's like no questions on this. And I feel
Gotcha.
really for making Hunar wait 4 days for something that I just had to rubber stamp anyway.
Awesome. Before we need to drop off, I do have a little bit of a superficial question on this, since there's
Yeah,
not
this is sort of
enough.
just like, let's spend our time teaching you a little bit about the backend and database migration.
It's awesome.
Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This is super helpful and fantastic. And that is also where my question is coming from. You just mentioned like database reviewer and backend reviewer and all these things, and that is where I would come across like, where do you draw the line? From my understanding, every backend engineer will work with migrations. They will actually access the database, all of these stuff. So what is a backend reviewer qualified to that what is a database reviewer qualified to that a backend reviewer is not?
Oh, like basically they understand all this stuff in a lot more detail, and they understand like the subtle concerns about impacting the like, do you know what a query explain is?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's just look at that really quick. So if you go to, for example, so GDK PSQL. So this is going to give us like the CLI for Postgres, which is the database, say like select star from workspace, right? Give you the query, right? So you can say explain, and it will give you the query plan, and like it's simple. If you did something like a little bit more complicated, where ID is equal to 3, right? And then you did an explain on that. Like it'll tell you like how expensive that is and all of that. And then there's like a whole like site we have to do the explains. Yeah, understanding explain plans, like. So the answer to your question is, like, they will look at things, the database reviewers will look at things like this and say, like, this is going to cause a problem. And is it going to be too slow? Is it on production or SaaS or maybe something else? Is it going to try to be modifying thousands or tens of thousands or millions of records? If so, like you may have to run it as a background migration. And so if you look in the code, I know this is small. Maybe this is a little bit better. And so if you look here under DB migrate, so there's like all of these migrations, every single change that has ever, actually not ever, like periodically we collapse these. So these are the only ones since 2021. And every change to the database is represented as one of these. But there's like some of them that are really slow, or background migrations have to be run separately. Like these post migrates are like, okay, this is going to run after the deploy happens and it's going to run in the background. Background migrations. Like here's the doc on it. And these are sort of like custom concepts we come up with that Rails doesn't have first class, but you sort of have to have as a main, like when you have a huge installation like this, you have to have these sort of concepts.
Gotcha.
And this was the last thing I was going to show you, this console.postgres.ai. How do you GLD? Yeah, database lab. So the way I was telling you how to do an explain plan, like we actually have this service, the postgres.ai. And then when you, I don't know why that's not, there we go. And you can say like, ask Joe, and you could, again, I think you should look at the docs. So you can say like, explain star from where ID equal 1. Sort of that same thing we were doing there. And then this like knows about our particular database and our Postgres schema and all of that. And it's like a service that we pay for. And then part of these migration style guides are like, you have to run this thing, and then It's slow, but it'll print out all of this information, like to do that same explain that I was doing in the CLI, but in a more complex way. And then it saves it, and it's a link to it. And then you have to put the link to it in your MR. So then when the database reviewers come along, like they'll need to do it. I'm wondering why like normally like these all they'll often, if there's a change to the database, it'll say, have you done an explain plan? Put an explain plan in your MR instructions. It didn't here. So I don't know if like that's because it's simple enough that it knows or what. Okay, so you can see here, like this random thing I did, whereas I could have just as easily pasted in, you know, the actual query that he, like when you run this migration, right? Like if I were on this, I would run right db migrate. If I had checked out this branch, which I haven't yet, we're running out of time, it would run this migration, and in the logs, it would spit out the actual SQL that it did. I would take that raw SQL, paste it in here, instead of, you know, this sample query I did. It would like give me this link here that explains all the details, the index scan, like all of the stuff that it did. You stick that in the description of the MR, and then when the database maintainer comes along, they'll look at that and they'll either say, okay, it's no problem, or like, no, this like could lock up the whole instance when they're doing the next deploy and the migrations are happening automatically. You have to do it as a background migration.
That sounds like a terrible amount of responsibility being a backend reviewer or maintainer.
On
I was going
database,
to say that.
Yeah, database, sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
just
you
sorry,
really don't want to
I
get it
know a
wrong.
lot of SQL and databases and Postgres. And like I
Wow.
know some about SQL, but like I don't know Postgres. I worked with mostly MySQL for most of my career and not much with Postgres.
Gotcha. Wow.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's sort of, we didn't really review anything, but it's just a little. tour
Thanks
of
so
that.
much for the tour and taking the time.
Thank
This
you.
was
Yeah.
super insightful. Very much to learn. I'll see if I can find some more MRs and go on a tour. Sweet. We have to drop.
Like
Maybe
whenever there's a database change, it's like, oh, all right, like do it in a separate MR and try to, and because of like the nature of the changes, you have to spread the migrations over like multiple releases. It's like, okay, first create this table, then in the next release, you know, 16 dot whatever, then you can copy the data over, and then the release after that, then you can delete the old column or table. It's like these long drawn out things sometimes, depending on the nature of it.
This is painful thinking about it. Okay.
Yes.
Which is the
Awesome.
same sort of thing you have to do like on the front end, like when you're depending on an API, it's like, okay, first you got to roll on the backend API. Otherwise, there's a chance there'll be the time during the deploy that it will fail because the backend's out of sync with the client code you're serving. It's the same sort of idea.
Yep. Good stuff.
All right.
Thanks so much for the tour.
Thanks,
I'll
Chet.
catch you soon.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.